Hey everyone, welcome back. Another episode of Roll 'em If You Got 'em. Carl's always joined with Dakota.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, in this video, we're kind of doing a recap to our 6 weeks of SLAPCHOP that we did and w- why we didn't quit early, but we did fall short of the original goal. The original
Mhm,
goal was for us to each do a video over like every week for 6 weeks. Well, we ended up only getting 10 videos out and it took us 7 weeks to do it. Uh, Part of the reason is that it's hard to each do a painting video every single week.
mhm.
And if you can tell, we haven't posted much in like a month now because we got really burnt out. So,
Yeah, it's also like with it too, it's just like how many times can we do the same thing until you're like, man, this is just repetitive.
yeah, we definitely hit that. So, we're going to talk about what worked, what didn't work, and then what is kind of in between. So, this first one here, this is my Burgest from the Witcher Old World miniatures game, and this was my attempt at what I was calling reverse slap chop. White primer, dark tone wash, white dry brush. I'm putting this in the it worked category because I got the result that I wanted, even though the result I wanted in the end was incorrect.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, we talked about this kind of at the time of the episode. What I should have done was a white prime, still a gray dry brush, and then a light black dry brush on top,
Mhm.
and then painted this model so he looked like he was glowing from the inside out.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, I didn't really have that thought until afterwards. I mean, this is what I wanted them to look like going into this, and what I wanted going into it. I think it went really well. It just I really hadn't sat down and thought about it and like what he
Right. Yeah,
was
it's
going to draw like.
one of those things where you're like, yeah, I wanted to look like this, and then you do it, and then somebody says like, oh, you were really going for this, and you're like, DM, you're right. That's what I was going for, even though it turned out exactly how I was anticipating it.
Yeah, it turned out exactly how I anticipated, but there was some comments where I'm like, "Oh, like no, like you're 100% right. I did what I wanted to do, but what I wanted to do is incorrect."
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm putting my Burgest in the it worked, but at the same time, I wish I had two of these guys because I would go back and um redo him as
In
I
the other way.
should
Mhm.
have. Um but I considered repainting the guy, but like I said, there's a couple hundred models in that game. Maybe not a couple hundred, but there's a lot. And I've painted about
About 4.
I was gonna say six, but probably four. It probably is four, actually,
Yeah.
I think. It's not good when you can remember exactly how many models you've painted out of
100.
out of 100 plus for a game.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, totally a win with this guy. I mean, I think he still looks cool. He's just a little bit different than what you really wanted, yet it still was kind of our reverse slap chop where you white prime and do the thing that we've shown, and then go back and do some other stuff. So, he was definitely a win.
Yeah, he looks cool. He looks cool enough to where I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna go back and mess with them.
Mhm.
But yeah.
All right, and then the next thing that we would say that worked is the red power armor for the Space Marines. It's honestly, it just turned out good. I don't know. For me, I don't know if it's like the just how the contrast paint worked differently than the other colors. As you go through and you're watching the video and see it, he just turned out and actually looks really really good. I would consider if I played like a Blood Angels, I would do this scheme all over uh, for them, but I don't. So he's the red guy.
I don't, so I won't.
Yeah, exactly.
It almost has to be something different in that color
Uh-huh.
compared to, and we'll see later in the video when we get to the things that don't work. Um, it has to be something in the paint, you think?
Yeah,
Because
I
your app, I'm assuming your application is exactly the same. It looks the
yeah.
same.
The one thing I've heard with the contrast paints is kind of the consistency from paint to paint on like how they flow and do stuff like that. Like I've heard that, and obviously like seeing it firsthand on
Mhm.
here, you see it. The Space Marines in general, super hard to just contrast paint. I mean, I've done flat surfaces before and they've sucked, but these guys like they just like he looks good. The rest made my skin curl, and
Yeah.
I was real yeah about
Well,
him.
and it shows because like when you hit like pouches and the Aquila and the weapons, you hit those with contrast paints, they always look good.
Yeah.
You hit the shoulders, you hit the helmets, the legs, like those things just don't
Hmm.
usually look that great
Uh,
with the contrast paints.
but the red I think the red looked really good. Like
But
there's some spots that I could do better, and it's just more of a not using contrast a lot. And I think and also a mix of just like actually, I don't think people realize how hard it is to paint on camera sometimes. Um,
yeah,
like it's really, it's kind of hard, especially when you're doing where you're like trying to be detailed with contrast paints. It's just it's a mess.
right. Also, real quick, if anyone's listening to the podcast here, um, if you want, run over to YouTube and you can kind of follow along with some of the videos, or if not, you can just listen to us talk about how essentially there are limitations to slap chop, and
Mhm. Yeah,
it's large flat surfaces more so than if you're doing things with lots of
detail.
textures, I
Uh-huh.
guess.
Yeah, if you do
You
like
know,
if you do a fur, it's like super easy to slap chop that and make it look
cloth,
awesome.
fur, skin. Like these are all the places where slap chop belongs. Flat power armor, it's just not.
Yeah,
Um, with the exception, like, if you're going for a very clean flat power armor, I should say.
yeah.
If you're going for a clean one,
There's probably ways you could do it to make it look better with like the slap chop method, but I think we'll get into this later when we're talking about what didn't work on just like how to do things different with Marines.
yes. So next one that worked was my display piece Plague Marine, Space Marine Heroes 3, blah, 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 blah. Plague Marines work very well for slap chop because the the armor having what essentially comes out to look like scratches and
Pock marks and
variations, yeah, just like a flat surface, but like it looks maybe more weathered is
mhm.
kind of the term I'm looking for. Like that works for a slap choppy sort of method.
Yeah, even just like the details, like like their legs are broken up into more sections and like yeah, just all like the
True.
details within the armor itself just like lend it to actually working better. Especially when
Yes.
you like go back over it. But yeah, this whole project too, I thought was pretty cool. Making a display piece out of a model. I'd personally have a hard time doing it because I'm a fan of like if I'm making a model, I want to be able to like play with that model.
So we have a friend, Roswell, who years and years ago we were talking about magic. We were talking about trying to get into magic, and he's been a big magic player for a very long time.
Mhm.
And he said that you need to decide before you start playing if you're a player or a collector. He goes, because you go to a game store, you open up a pack of cards, and you might get one card it's like a good card, but you know that you could go to the desk right now, give them that card, and get five more packs of cards. It's like, are you a player or a collector? This is certainly I'm a collector
Mhm.
sort of shtick here for
Yeah,
sure.
it definitely works with this guy too because he's from the Heroes pack, I think he was. So
Yes.
he's his own unique thing, and he
So
doesn't it's not necessarily like he's from a unit. It's not
yeah,
like he bought like 7 Plague Marines and he put one of them in a display. It's
he
like
is literally a collector's
Mhm.
kind of item. So I was much more okay with
Yeah.
putting him in a display piece right here above my computer. And but yeah, this is a project that I thought about for a long time, and I designed the 3D printed box myself, and I used it for the 6 weeks of Slap Shop, and it came out, like I said, 9 out of 10. I wish I would have had brighter lights, but I just bought whatever lights I thought
Mhm.
worked off of Amazon. But it's really cool. I have quite a few more of these guys. I think I will do more of these in time. maybe even get all 7 of them done as little display pieces. So this definitely went into the it worked for me.
Yeah.
Come out quite cool.
Yeah, I think too with just it being like that standard slab choppy method, it looks awesome because you
Mm,
can clearly see everything, and then it's a lit well. I mean, like I know you're saying like get better lights, but I think the lighting does, even though it's lighter, it works.
sure. Thank you.
On to the next guy that worked. My Sons of Malice Legionary that I painted up. Uh, Kind of goes into the same boat as the Plague Marine. His armor just isn't flat. So when you actually put contrast paints on it, it works. And the fact that the contrast paint I'm using is black. So you're not really getting shades with that. You only get the shades on the white parts, which white's not really that hard to do, I don't think, when you're slap chopping, because it's, I don't know, almost like a shade.
It's like kind of done for you, and then
Yeah,
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 you end up just kind of shading it almost.
yeah, yeah. But I don't know. He was fun. He turned out pretty well. I've done like one dude just like with standard paint, and then one dude with the slap chop. I mean, the standard paint one's probably obviously easier, but it was actually fun seeing the slap chop work on a guy, I'd say.
Yeah, I think this guy came out awesome. Like I was trying to twist Dakota's arm not very long ago into getting more Chaos Space Marines. Just because I want to see a whole army done in this Sons of Malice, this black and white. I don't want to call it checkered, but proportioned maybe.
Mhm.
Like this arm's black, the opposite leg is black. It's the opposite side of the backpack, this side of the face. It looks so cool.
Yeah, yeah,
It
for sure.
looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome. Will I get more in the future? I don't know, maybe. I have like a whole squad of these dudes that I can do up, so I can at least get a squad done. Uh, but time will tell. I got more just
Yep.
generic Space Marines to paint
And
green.
then once again, it's almost like what was the movie? It was a Bruce Willis movie. It was called Sin City. The whole movie's in black and white, but
Hmm.
like they just show like red.
Hmm.
These
Yeah.
dudes give me that vibe because like the colors yank your eye around the model. The
Hmm.
bone color, the red weapons, because the black and white like breaks it down for you proportionately to like into different sections, and you're like, oh, I can just look at this piece for a minute, and then boom, here's this big punch of color that's in it, or just this brown belt, or
Hmm.
the parts where there are color stand out so well. And then you see the whole model about 3 times before you realize it's trimmed in silver.
Yeah.
And you're
Hmm.
like, oh, holy shit, this is cool. It's so cool.
Yeah. Definitely a favorite of mine, even for sure. Just such unique models.
Yes. And then finally on the list of things that worked, um, I if you want to call it a kit bash, but I did it all within uh the software mesh mixer slicer, but I basically bashed a plague burst rhino and nope, a plague burst crawler and a rhino together, and then added some extra little nurgly bits, and I made what I was calling my plague burst rhino. It has the front end of the crawler, but it's got the loadout and the doors and stuff of the rhino. And this is once again, it's an idea I've had for quite some time.
Hmm.
Um, and I was constantly I was like, I don't know if I could do this or not, and it took me quite a while because I'm not I'm novice at best at my 3D modeling skills,
Hmm.
but that worked out very well. And then I tried the exhaust painting, the blue, purple, orange kind of burnt exhaust look that I've seen people do. Different, there's different variations of this, obviously. But I was like, you know what? Well, it's time to try it. Like this thing's got 4 exhaust pipes. It's 4 opportunities for me to try it. I used my speed paint wet blending technique that we've done other videos on. I'll also throw that one up here. And it came out super dope, and I was crazy happy with it.
Yeah, no, definitely a cool, unique model that kind of just like all the Death Guard stuff. It just has its own flavor, and really just seeing a lot of kind of things come together on it. I think works. I think so. This is one too. Not too many people said much as you slap chopped it, yet you also airbrushed it. but I think it works on this because everything is so flat to begin with.
Okay. Yeah,
So
this
you like it's like it works.
this one did not get the hate of what we'll get to later. All
Yeah.
right. What did not work? This is our first what did not work.
Every other Space Marine.
Every other Space Marine.
So you're gonna be watching me do the green one here, and like I said, I think the paint's a little different. I mean, was I maybe trying to be more careful? I don't know. It just didn't work. It was like so streaky, and I think I have too much OCD to like not just look past the streakiness.
Uh-huh.
Where it's like, okay, it's wrong. There's one actually. So I painted up one. It never made it into a video, and it was blue. I did a librarian, and it was just god awful trash. And
Just
I was like, no, this guy's gone. Like, we're not gonna like. It was at the point too when we both kind of decided like, oh, we've done too much, just like basic slap chop, anyways.
yeah.
So it's just been redundant. Uh, and I was like, yeah, we're not gonna try to even show him because he was a Terminator model too, and he just
Just
looked all shitty.
yeah, so you can see it in the leg here as, the leg is where you started, so it's kind of dry by the time you get to the rest of the model. Now we talked about this being potentially a good recipe if you wanted like a camouflage kind of look.
Yeah,
Um like that it looks you want to call it patchy? I don't it looks thick in some spots and super thin in others, and if you're doing a raptor squad though, like
yeah,
leave in a pinch more gray so it kind of darkens everything, but this would work for something like that, but that's not what you were
yeah.
going for here.
Even to I know some people when they'll do like contrast on the Marines, they'll do 2 layers, but it kind of goes into my thought of like, why would I do the same step like this twice when not just using a regular base paint and doing other
Right.
steps?
It
Because like you get into the slab chop and you've already done like 3 or 4 steps, and it's just like, eh,
Yeah, it really defeats the purpose of the slap shop
yeah,
if a whole model needs two coats.
yeah, and
If
then kind of,
it's horns or it's skin tone, or those are things that I have done multiple coats on or a little bit different basing, but it's just a little bit of the model. You're talking about the whole model here. If we
yeah,
have to cover the whole model a second time, we're probably using the wrong method.
uh and then kind of going off that right into we're showing the bone one now. It worked. My pooling was a little bad on it, but at the same time, it's one of those where it's like I could have just primed this dude white and got the same
Hmm.
thing. Like slap chopping did nothing for this guy, and it is what it is. I'd say, but it's just with Marines. I feel like there's just so many other different methods you could use outside of slap chopping. Even if you're
Right.
just like, I want to get an army painted, you could legitimately just be like, okay, what chapter are you playing? Oh, you're playing Dark Angels. Cool. Get a green rattle can
Get a
and
green
just
rattle can. Yep.
rattle can the whole army. Pick out the weapons, do the lenses, and then do the Aquila. Like
Yep.
3 steps. There's about 4 colors in there. It's technically going to be tournament legal, and it's just easier. I mean, there's easier things to do. Like
Yeah.
slap chopping Marines, not the way. Just basic
Yep.
Marines.
Or going off that same method, if you rattle can whatever one you pick there, and then you can use sort of the same method as slap chop, but you dry brush them a lighter
Yeah,
variation of
exactly.
that color, and then you're like, all right, cool, I'm done.
Yep. Now he's highlighted, and
Yep.
you kind of, yeah. There's just so many different methods, and even too with, I think when you slap chop some stuff, I feel like you kind of get to that point of no return almost, where you're
Hmm.
like, there's nothing I could do to make this better. He's already kind of meh. When I think if you just do, say you primed it and then dry brushed it and did weapons, you
Yep.
could come back to that model in a year and be like, I want to take another step in like getting better at painting.
Yes. Okay. We're ending on we're not going to say this worked or didn't work because, it
Yeah.
we'll get there. Okay, so I did Zenithal versus Slap Chop versus Black Chop, which was prime it black, dry brush it white. So we were skipping the gray. And
Mhm.
then I did a gray chop, which was prime it gray, dry brush it white. So we were the third one we were skipping the middle step. The fourth one we were skipping the beginning step.
Mhm.
Um, the whole internet yelled at me for using an airbrush to do my base coat here, because the paint isn't right, even though it's only 28% traditional paint, and I feel like I took adequate steps to thin it, and the paint scheme looks exactly like the actual slap chop model. Blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
Anyhow, we're just gonna call this one the jury's out. on these guys. They came out looking great.
Yeah.
Um, the the gray chop guy, the primed him gray, dry brushed him white, essentially skipping the black version of the slap chop. I liked him a lot. It kind of brought attention to, like, I think that's a tool that could be used going forward.
Hmm.
Like maybe Space Marines, like maybe you don't need the three mid tones. Maybe you
Hmm.
start with the gray, you just hit the white, and then you do your color over top.
Hmm.
Uh, there could be something there. Like for sure, I think there's something there. Or if you wanted a shade lighter or whatever. But these guys, they came out looking. I think they came out looking very good. It came out looking way more similar than I had anticipated.
Hmm.
Um, I know we talked about this at the end of them. If I tell you, hey, they're all slap chopped, you'd go, okay. If I said, hey, they're all Zenithal, that one you may be a little less inclined to believe because you can see that slap chop stick through kind of on the other ones.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
if I say, hey, I gray chopped these guys, I primed them all gray, and whatever, this one just came out lighter in the end. Like they came out similar enough to where if I don't tell you I did something different with the four of them,
Hmm.
especially if they're in a 7-man, like I don't think you're gonna notice.
Yeah. I, I think the most kind of going to where people are like, "Oh, you didn't do it right," and I kind of see it is since you didn't brush it on, it doesn't get any like concentrated pooling in like those corner areas. So
Hmm.
you can kind of see where it all just kind of runs together flat, and then it's just your underpainting that makes it stand out and look different. Like if you zenithal, like if you were just like using your airbrush, zenithal the thing like you did,
Yes.
and then you sprayed the color, that's how it would turn out. And I think that just kind of you just applied zenithal three different ways or four different ways essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't disagree there
Mhm.
at all.
But like I mean, they look great. It's just a different style of doing something.
Yeah, I did recently have someone ask me my bone recipe, which I kind of do have a particular way I do my bone, so I'll probably be doing a full video on that here soon. Um, Maybe sooner rather than later, not 100% sure because I have I Dakota will tell anyone who asks. I'm never at a shortage of ideas.
Hmm.
I send him text messages to the extent that my wife yells at me because he hasn't responded yet, and I've sent him 8 text messages that are all a paragraph long. Um, about like, oh, I had this idea, and I just go down it, and I think at this point he just kind of ignores me. He knows we'll talk soon, and I'll just get it all out then. Uh,
Well, it's just so hard to respond when you get like 8 text messages and you're like, "Oh, those are all great ideas," and then you're like,
well,
but then like this eighth message is like, "Hey, did you see the Cavs game or something?" And you're like, yeah, like
um,
whatever it is."
well, and Dakota actually does things at work,
Yeah.
so when he looks at his phone in between meetings or something, and it's Carl's squirrel brain gone fucking wild in the last half hour, I don't blame him. I don't hold it against it. Honestly, I'm just recording my thoughts somewhere, and
Yeah, you
it's in
sometimes you
text messages to Dakota.
sometimes you just gotta write them down so you can remember them for later, and
Yes.
also when you then write them out, you're like, "Okay, maybe that wasn't that great."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah. Oh, for sure. We've definitely had those moments where it's like, what the hell am I even talking about?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us and kind of reviewing our 6 weeks of Slap Chop here, air quotes, that turned into 7 weeks and was only 10 videos other than 12. We're not quitting Slap Chop entirely, but we did quit a little early on
I'm
our 6 week. Dakota's quitting. We
I'm
know.
quitting SlapChop. Actually, I have 2 models that I do have primed black to SlapChop. They're a Song of Ice and Fire. I might get to them eventually, no clue, but they basically are at the point where I have to SlapChop them.
Well, there you go. That's good. Um, but yeah, we do have some more stuff coming up soon, and our right now our big thing we're working on is our horde mode crusade. So
Mhm.
uh if any of that interests you, stay on the lookout. We have a few videos on that, but there will be more to come. It's going to get pretty big and intense.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, thank you everybody, and we'll see you hopefully sometime next week.
Yep. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.